Hi, and welcome to my alternative reality. This week we'll be devoting most of our episode to a fascinating interview with Crispin Hellion Glover, star of Back to the Future and now film auteur. We'll also be revisiting the Westall UFO controversy. Incredible stuff. Meanwhile, sit back, relax, and enjoy the trip.
Okay, so you've gone to school one day, you're sitting there in class, all of a sudden someone runs in hysterical. There's UFOs outside. Everyone jumps up, runs outside, and sure enough, there's spacecraft in the sky. Sounds like an episode of the X-Files? Well, on April 6, 1966, in a suburb called Westall in Melbourne, this is exactly what happened. I'll be talking to 3 witnesses that were there the day the Earth stood still at Westall High School.
Just don't wanna be lonely.
Okay, well here we are at Grange Reserve, which is not that far from the school, just over there, and we're here talking to 3 witnesses of the day there. We've got Terry, Joy and Sue. G'day girls, thanks for joining us. You guys were there on the day back in 1966.
6th of April, 1966.
6th of April. Terry, tell us what just briefly what you saw, what your experience was.
I was already out on the oval playing sport, and I don't know who saw them first, but someone said look up in the sky, and I saw these silver discs flying over the school quite high up. We were all mesmerised, of course. And the next thing, they came down low, and one appeared to land here in the Grange, so I jumped through the fence and ran. A couple of girls were ahead of me, and when I arrived in the Grange, I was just in time to see the other 2 girls had passed out, and it was just lifting off the ground very slowly, and then it appeared to turn on its side, and it just almost disappeared straight up into the air. From memory, it was a big round silver, sort of a matte silver disc with a bit of a hump on the top, and then when I saw it lift off the ground, there were a row of purpley blue lights around underneath, but no windows or anything visible, and no joins anywhere.
Another student rang in and said, Mr. Greenwood, there's flying saucers in the sky. Well, of course, we all started to laugh, didn't we? Oh, yeah, sure, right. So anyway, it was near the end of the period, so he said, oh, well, come on, we'll all go down and have a look. So we all bolted down to the oval and whatever else, and everybody went all directions, all over the place.
How many did you actually see?
I saw 3.
Went down into the trees, behind the trees, only for, I don't know, a minute maybe, I don't really know. And it came up above the trees again, it banked on its side like that, and then just took off, and it was gone.
We were used to seeing planes because of being so close to Moorabbin Airport, so that's why we knew that what we were looking, eventually, what we were looking at definitely wasn't a plane.
After it all happened and they all vanished, you had a big assembly, is that right?
Yeah, we were all called to a special assembly, and Mr. Zambleby, that was the principal, said to everybody, you're not to talk about it, it's all rubbish, it's finished. If anybody speaks about it, there'll be consequences. 200
kids in the school, would you say 100 kids saw what you saw?
Well, one of the guys that I dealt with through work, he was actually an ex-policeman for 28 years, and he remembers it as plain as day too.
A teacher that actually had a camera and took photos of the craft.
She did.
And what happened to that?
Barbara Robbins. Well, they took it off her, the whole camera.
The military were at the school 20 minutes after the event.
Well, they burnt all the paddock.
Well, they burnt the paddock.
Took soil samples away.
Yeah.
And did they say it was a weather balloon?
Yes. That was one thing, and then the next day they said it was something else. One day it was the weather balloon, the next day it was a top experiment.
Police came, ambulances came.
Yes, army
cameramen from Channel 9.
And someone was saying, the cameraman from Channel 9, you were interviewed from Channel 9?
Absolutely.
And that footage is now missing?
Disappeared.
Right, so there's obviously a cover-up here. Is that's how you feel?
Yes. Absolutely. My personal opinion is that they were genuine. They were definitely UFOs, and they were terrifying. Yeah. Can you imagine the mass hysteria?
But the idea that it's kept a secret because it would actually change the paradigm of society.
That's
Yeah.
right.
if it were
Exactly.
true.
Oh, of course.
So there might be initial hysteria, but after that, what does it actually mean to the human race? I mean, do you guys think about that, or?
Sometimes I think, I believe that there's, I mean, we're living here on this planet, so why couldn't there be someone else living
It's
on
very,
another planet?
Yeah.
very naive to assume that in our universe we're the only
beings.
ones.
Let's hope one day
we get an answer.
that we get an answer from all of this.
I want, before I die,
Yeah.
honestly, I want someone to come and say, yes, you're not silly.
Well, okay, there you go. Australia's biggest mass UFO sighting ever. Witnesses, the military, cover-ups, the whole bit, and we don't have an investigation. 44 years on. I'm hoping that, this can of beans can be opened so that we can find out, finally, what the truth is about the Westall UFO incident.
Okay, we're ready to go. So you ready just to go?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. So we're right with sound and picture, everything beautiful? Okay, great. Okay, let's do it then. Okay, well, pleased to meet you, Crispin.
Good to meet you.
Thank you very much for coming on to the show.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
It's,
Thanks for having me.
I wasn't sure if we'd be able to secure an interview with you, but it's very exciting for me
Yeah.
personally. So.
Oh, good. Yeah, it worked out. I was doing a radio interview, and I guess you just travel all over doing your interviews?
We mainly operate, Melbourne and out of Melbourne. We're just based in Melbourne, and we're
Okay.
a small crew, very humble.
But you're on the nets, so people would know it in Sydney or just Melbourne?
Oh no, we put our episodes on YouTube, and we're also we're on Channel 31, which is a community television station, like a community radio station.
I just asked because, of course, I have the show tonight at the Westgarth Theatre at 8:30, and the next weekend I'll be in Sydney at the Chevelle Theatre on Friday and Saturday. I guess I should tell what I'm presenting, which is I have 2 different live dramatic narrations of 8 different books that are hour-long presentations of profusely illustrated books that I made, well, most of these made in the 80s and early 90s. Because they're so heavily illustrated, the illustrations are projected behind me as I dramatically narrate them. If I were to just read the words, they would not necessarily make as much sense.
You wrote it?
I made these in the 80s. I took old books from the 1800s and reworked them and turned them into different books from what they originally were. And I have 2 different hour-long live dramatic narrations of these books that I perform on the 2 subsequent nights. And then there's a feature film that I present. I'll talk in more depth about that in a bit. I started acting at a young age by my own choice when I was 13. I started studying professionally when I was 15. When I was 16, the year was 1980. And I learned how to drive, and I was going to all the revival houses that were popular in Los Angeles before the VHS kind of destroyed those cinemas. The films that they were playing, this was 1980, of course, were films made in the 1970s, 1960s, or prior, 1920s, 1930s. There was something going on at that time where there were very strong questions being asked. And this is what I thought I was stepping into as a young actor, thinking, "Oh, this is great! This situation that I'll do something I want to do and ask all of these questions." But I didn't start working a lot until I turned 18, which was 1982. And it was around that time, now I see in retrospect, things started shifting quite diametrically.
What year was that, sir?
That was 1982.
Okay.
And I was looking around at the movies that I was starting to act in 1982, 83, 84. It's like, where are these questions that I thought I was I was going to be a part of. My first film, called What Is It, is a reaction to the corporate constraints that have happened in the last 30 years of filmmaking, wherein anything that can possibly make an audience member uncomfortable is necessarily excised, or that film will not be corporately funded or distributed. And I think that's a very damaging thing, because it's that moment when an audience member sits back in their chair, looks up at the screen and thinks to themselves, is this right what I'm watching? Is this wrong what I'm watching? Should I be here? Should the filmmaker have done this? What is it? And that's the title of the first film. What is it that's taboo in the culture? What does it mean when the taboo has been ubiquitously excised? And I think it's incredibly damaging, because if our questioning is ubiquitously excised, that's where real education is happening. And when people are really asking questions, that's real education. And to have that completely taken away, it's a lack of genuine education, meaning learning from within oneself. And what is the opposite of education? Well, it's propaganda, and I do think that's what's happening.
Indoctrination.
Say it again?
Indoctrination.
Yes, yeah, indoctrinated into corporate constraints. This is a real thing that's been going on. The first film, What Is It? Most of the actors have Down syndrome, but it's not about Down syndrome at all. I didn't step into it with the concept that I was going to be making this reaction. I was reacting emotionally, artistically to these things, and it was over a period of time when I changed the film from what was going to be a short into a feature that I started realizing that I innately had a taboo subject matter on it. Sometimes people think I'm saying because I have actors with Down syndrome in it that it's taboo. I'm not saying that. In fact, you'll see corporately funded and distributed films or television shows that have actors with Down syndrome, which of course is fine, but that's not taboo. What I have in the film, though, is I have actors with Down syndrome playing characters that do not necessarily have Down syndrome. And that's something you will not see in a corporately funded and distributed film. If you won't see it very often to have an actor with Down syndrome, but you will see it. But if you do see it in a corporately funded and distributed film, that actor will be playing somebody that is supposed to be playing a character who has Down syndrome. From my point of view, it's like, who cares what anybody is? My philosophy is everybody should be able to play everybody, because part of what the fun of acting is to have interpretations and thoughts. I understand why sometimes there's history and people can find things offensive, but even still, it's like, it's better to have the discussion. It's better to get into the mix of these things. And if somebody's upset, let's talk about it. Let's not hide it away and get rid of taboo areas because people are made uncomfortable about it. That's where propaganda ends up starting.
Good art should make people uncomfortable to a certain degree, like you're saying.
It can. I mean, it doesn't have to, but it can. And for us to have it ubiquitously excised in our main forms of communication is really a bad thing. There's no question about it. The second film that I'm also showing is called It Is Fine, Everything Is Fine. And it was written by a man who has a severe case of cerebral palsy. His name was Stephen C. Stewart. And Steve had been locked into a nursing home when he was in his early 20s when his mother died. And he did not want to be in this nursing home. And the people that were taking care of him there would derisively call him an MR, a mental retard, which is not a nice thing to say to anybody, but Steve was of normal intelligence, and the emotional turmoil that he must have gone through for the decade he was in this nursing home, I can't even begin to imagine. But when he got out, he wrote this screenplay, and he wrote it in the style of a 1970s US TV murder mystery movie of the week wherein he's the bad guy. And because he wrote it in this genre style, as opposed to a standard autobiography, there's something about the dynamic that reveals certain truths, innate truths of his life. And there's an emotional catharsis that happens in this film that I hold in a very high level. When the whole trilogy is done. These two films are going to be part of a trilogy ultimately. The second film, It Is Fine, Everything Is Fine, it'll be the best film of the trilogy, but not only that, I feel like it'll be the best film I'll have anything to do with in my whole career. It's because of this emotional catharsis. I feel very strongly. And I don't mean to dismiss What Is It, because there are things in What Is It that Everything Is Fine doesn't have, but it's this emotional catharsis that I hold on a very high level.
Do you get sick of dealing with the Back to Future films and all the questions and around that?
Of course, I was only in the first Back to the Future film. There was a lawsuit, and this is something that informed me about things. This was a very specific situation that informed me early on, and it was really the film that made me think about the questions, because I'd had a discussion with Robert Zemeckis when making the film. I'll put it nicely. I had a discussion with him where the screenplay was slightly different when I first read it. I won't go into so much detail. There are things I won't say here, but something that I've been publicly stating really only in the last couple of years, because there's a producer on that film named Bob Gale who's been lying, literally just out and out lying about me because of my lawsuit, and because he's cannot deal with the fact that they did something illegal. They took another actor, they took the molds from my face from the original film that were used for old age makeup, and they put a false nose, chin, and cheekbones onto another actor and interspiced a small amount of footage of me from the original film in order to fool audiences into believing that I was in the film. It worked, didn't it? It did fool people. Of course, and that's why I had my lawsuit. I didn't want people to, I didn't want people thinking I didn't do that performance, and I didn't like the performance. If I had done the performance, I would have done it differently, and have people believing to me it was not a good performance. I wouldn't have done it that way. And I wanted people to know that that was not me. I was proud of the work that I did in the first film, and I'm not in the second film, and for people to think that, to me, an inferior performance is
misrepresentation.
Yeah, it's illegal. It is by the law strictly illegal. But instead of, owning up to that, what they've done when they get the questions about it is this one producer in particular has made up lies about me, saying that I asked for the same amount of money that Michael J. Fox was getting. It's total fallacy. But he's a propagandist. He's somebody that's doing this stuff. Well, I should go back to what my original situation was there was something different in the screenplay. I had asked questions about it. That got changed, but part of what it had to do with it was that the characters were rewarded with money at the end of the film, or financial or material rewards.
He writes the best-selling sci-fi book.
Yeah, but that's okay, actually. I didn't have a problem with that. That's artistic. Yeah. What I did question was that we had a whole bunch of stuff in the way the things were designed, the clothes we were wearing, and even more specifically, the son at the end has a car in the garage and he pumps his fist in the air. Now, I wasn't saying these details, but I said to Robert Zemeckis, if our characters come back and we have this financial reward, it makes the moral of the film money equals happiness, and people are sheep, and people will feel that, and they won't think it. I wasn't using those words, but that is how propaganda works. And I'm a big student of hero's journey story structure, and that reward is in the film. It corrupts that film. I would feel much better about that film. I always would have felt better, and I still would argue that that film would equally be effective if what I was arguing was just the characters should be in love, and that would be the reward. Yeah. And then, sure, it's fine that money could come in later, but don't show the financial reward. Well, Zemeckis did not like this, and this is what ended up leading to me not being in the sequels, and that stuff was very informative to me at I was 20 years old when they made that.
And you were standing up for your ideals.
And I was just, I was a young, idealistic person that would have been watching these movies. I thought I was saying the right thing. 25 years later, to have a producer lying about me on these DVDs, Blu-rays, to because they retaliated against this 20-year-old actor that asked questions. It's like, this is why I'm so passionate about making sure that questions need to be asked.
You've got a great nose. You have a very strong nose. That's great.
Yeah, that's something that it's something that actually, if you think about it, I have the kind of nose that a lot of people would get get rid of the bump in it. To me, that's horrific.
Maybe that's why you can't compromise. You have a strong nose, represents your strong values.
Maybe you might be right about that. I haven't really thought of it that way. But it's true. Your physical features can have involvement in your psychology.
So they're slicing and dicing their noses.
Possible. I mean, of course, there are all kinds. It's not just that way. There are people that have integrity. There are people that want to do good work, and I mean, you hear about the kind of salacious things, and that's out there too. But to me, it's obvious when you're out and about. You can see if people are kind of there just for fame's sake, or if somebody's really trying to get to something interesting and thoughtful. And Werner Herzog is one of my filmic heroes. He lives in Los Angeles, so and he went to Los Angeles because I think he said things like, "This is where interesting things are going on." So that's one of the great I don't know what you want to call them, iconoclasts, and and he's emigrated to Los Angeles definitely within the last decade.
You're still like a prisoner of your fame to any extent that you're inhibited from walking down the street. You're harassed too much by people.
No. I like I said earlier. I'm not an A-lister. I'm not somebody that is followed all around. And people come up. There's no question. I get approached a lot, but it's at the level where it's fine. I don't have to work. I don't have to have a bodyguard. I can walk around. It's fine.
I just thought that movie would have had such nostalgic appeal for people that would have been all over you.
Actually, when people come up and recognize me, it's not usually about that. What it is about is people having seen me in a lot of different things, which is pleasant, And what's interesting is I've even had people come up to me about the books. I've had people come up to me about my own films. That really surprises me. I'm very happy when that happens, of course. But I'm grateful that I'm able to be continuing to go on. It was a decision I made professionally at a young age because I thought it could be interesting, and ultimately it's working out. So I can't really complain.
Thank you very much for your time,
I
Chris.
appreciate it. You too.
Thank you. It's you seem like a person of a lot of integrity and humility. I'm surprised how accessible you are for a Hollywood, star.
No, these things are important. Especially, I should mention CrispinGlover.com, Twitter, Facebook, this kind of social media, this kind of stuff. These are helping with this kind of questioning that we're talking about. It's important.
That brings us to our conclusion. Hope you found it tasty. If you want to see or learn more, check out our Facebook page or YouTube channel. And remember, let your freak flag fly.